Well, good morning. It's a spectacular day down in Dorset today, so definitely a day for a walk. It's a kind of, if you imagine an oasis in the desert, that's what today is like, I think. We've had cloudy weather for some time, and we got cloudy weather coming for some time as well, according to my forecast. But today is meant to be lovely sunshine, so it's definitely a day to be out. And if you've been watching my videos before, or if you know Dorset, you probably know where I've come. I'm starting my walk from the Sandbanks Ferry, and I'm going to do a walk which is a regular walk of mine, which takes in the Sail Bay, Studland Beach, up over Ballard Down, round Old Harry Rocks, and back along the beach. And it's a great walk for this time of the year, especially for a number of reasons, but I'll tell you about that in a minute. It should be a beautiful day, beautiful walk, so hope you're going to join me. We'll tell you more as we go, but there's lots to see and some absolutely beautiful coastline, as I'm sure you will know, and beach walks, just great, nice and flat, not too much climbing for my old legs. What's not to like? Anyway, more in a minute. So as you can see, the ferry is not here, it's over the other side. It's at South Haven Point, and it's on its way back, so I'll be able to go and join that in just a moment. But what you're looking at here is the harbour entrance. We have the Sandbanks Peninsula on the left and South Haven Point on the right, and between those is a gap of 300 metres, I believe it is. And the only way to cross that, aside from swimming, which people have done, or a boat, if you've got one, the only way to cross it is on the ferry. And that's what we're going to start this walk with, a nice ferry ride. And yeah, I like to start here. I always think starting and finishing a walk by crossing this ferry, which is somewhat quirky, I think, and I always think that's a nice way to begin and end a walk. But this is Poole Harbour. Across here, the trees that you can see, that's Brownsea Island, and on the right is Brownsea Castle, which is looking beautiful in the sunshine today. But this is one of the largest natural harbours in the world, 100 miles of coastline, 15 square miles of water, I believe. But would you believe the average depth of water is just 48 centimetres, and that is pretty shallow, isn't it? So there are larger vessels that come out through here, but they have to follow the deep water channels. If we swing round, you can see the ferry is on its way, so I better go and get in the queue. This is the Bramblebush Bay, which is the current Sandbanks Ferry, and it's the 4th iteration. There has been a crossing between Sandbanks and the South Haven Point, since 1926. That's when the first ferry was installed, and that one was a steam-driven vessel carrying kind of 15 cars, which increased, I think, to 18 eventually. But there's been several iterations since then. The current one carries 48 cars, I believe, so it's quite a substantially bigger, and of course it's diesel operated rather than steam. And actually, looking into the distance there, I can see quite a lot of smoke, so I don't know if they're burning off heath or whether there's a fire. As you can see, or hear rather, we are underway. So the chain is two chains, each is 1,235 feet long, and it stretches. So every couple of weeks they have to remove a couple of links in order to keep the chain at its optimum length. And not only that, but the chain is replaced every 15 to 18 months. The chains are replaced, and the old ones are sold off, and they get used for weights, so kind of boat moorings or lobster pots or whatever. And I've got a bit in my garden, which I may well have said before on this video, I can't remember. So yes, I always enjoy coming across the ferry. It seems to be a nice start to the walk. I suppose is it a bit quirky having a chain ferry? This is the chains. I guess they're either old or new. I'm not sure which. They look old, so I suspect that's the old ones just laid out along the road. Yes, it's kind of quirky, and it's something which has been part of my life, the whole of my life really. I've used the Sandbanks chain ferry, so yeah, I always enjoy starting a walk coming across here. But yeah, it was first introduced 1926. Originally, I'm pretty sure originally there was a possible suggestion of actually building a bridge across the 300-metre harbour entrance, but that never took off. I mean, I think probably the run-up that would have been needed, because it had to be a reasonably high bridge because of vessels, large vessels coming into Poole Harbour, and I think the run-up was too great, or the cost was too great, so it was decided to put a chain ferry in instead. And the first diesel one was 1958. So I think when I first came over, well, I was born in 48, so the first one that I would have come across on would have been steam driven, and I still remember it. So yes, the ferry's been running for nearly 100 years. It'll be its 100th anniversary next year, I guess. But during that time, as you'd maybe expect, there have been a few incidents, either boats that have lost power or yachts that have kind of gone wrong and get pulled in by the tide and clash with the ferry, or get dragged underneath even. There's also been a few vehicle problems, vehicles running off the slipway into the water. There's even I think once a bus ran off the ferry ramp into the water, I believe. There have been a couple of incidents where the chains have got broken. I think certainly once or a couple of times, I think the Barfleur, the cross-channel ferry that operates out of Poole, snagged the chain and broke it. So yeah, been a few incidents. But the ferry operates 364 days of the year. Christmas Day, I think, is the only day you can't get the ferry, but it saves a 25-mile car drive all round the outskirts of the harbour, so it's a valuable resource. So if this were the early 1900s and you wanted to get across that harbour entrance there, as a foot passenger, you'd have had to go across by rowing boat. That must have been hard work, rowing a boat across there. And of course there's another dangerous place, because unexploded shells have been found along the beach, and heathland, because this is all heathland, because this was taken over by the military during the Second World War. So why is it a good walk for winter, as I said earlier? Well, there's a number of reasons. The first one is that sand, which is what we're going to get for the first third and the last third, is good when it's muddy everywhere. and the middle third is over the chalk hills, which drains well, which is also good when there's mud everywhere. So it's good underfoot for the wet season. That's not the only reason though. There's another reason, is that parking is free, because the Sandbanks Peninsula, which is one of the most expensive places to live in the whole world, they have put parking meters on all the roads. Some years ago now, I used to park there, catch the ferry, but then they put meters up, and they are not cheap to park there all day to come over here for a long walk. So I steer away from, or park somewhere else during the summer, but it's free over the winter till mid-March, I think it is, and they'll start charging again. And the third reason is that it's, well, I want to say less busy, so it's a quieter beach in winter, and I suspect we'll probably see quite a few walkers and dog walkers and that sort of thing, because it is popular for that. But what I mean is, if you come during the summer holidays, then the beach is obviously full, and I don't think it's so pleasant. It's actually quite chilly, I have to say. It was alright over the other side. Have a look up here. When I was over the other side, it's obviously a northerly wind blowing, I don't know, but certainly it was nice and warm over there. But now we're exposed over this side, so it's actually quite chilly. Might even have to put another layer on, never know. So the beach down below us here is Shell Bay, which I think probably gets its name from the fact there's always lots of shells there. I don't know, I assume that's where it gets its name. But this is a place I've been coming all my life. As I say, we used to come over here, the whole family used to come over here, get the ferry across. You know, extended family, aunties and uncles and cousins and all sorts. Big group of us used to come here, and we're doing it really ever since I was born. In fact, there's an old family photograph of a baby in a pram and in the dunes, and I'm pretty certain it's me. So yeah, it's got a lot of meaning. Shell Bay in the sand dunes and that sort of thing. Much quieter in those days, of course. You could play cricket on the sand without fear of hitting anybody. So this is where it turns round the point, and we start heading towards Studland, and this is going to be Studland Beach, and across the other side you can see Old Harry Rocks coming into view. Right, I think we'll join the beach now. Yeah. Cuttlefish. Anybody need any cuttlefish for your budgies? There's lots of it here. The army's out in force by the looks. This light is spectacular, isn't it? It's blinding, mind you, walking into this, but look at that. Isn't it wonderful the way the light is catching the ripples of the water? It's magical, that is. And there's another good thing with walking the beach, especially when the tide's out, that is. You get hard sand to walk on. Just look at this blue sky. Absolutely spectacular. Drink it in, because we're not going to see much more for a few days. There's a lot of white horses here. So I actually don't think it's a northerly wind. I think it's actually northeasterly. But it's amazingly beautiful. So we're approaching Studland now. Old Harry Rocks is getting closer. Well, for the time being, we're going to leave the beach and head into Studland and then climb up onto Ballard Down. There's a load of birds over there. Ah, yes. Let's have a look in the bookshop, which was a family home at one time. So this was the groom's cottage originally, and that I think is his bed. So it's a one-room cottage with a stove, a bed, table and chairs, usual kind of tiny little cottage, and it would have been occupied by the groom of the Banks family. So when the Banks family, who owned all this land at one time, when they were in Studland at their manor, which is now a hotel, their groom would have stayed in this cottage. All I need is my pipe. And a fire, of course. The fire's not going. And maybe a cup of tea. When I looked after the horses for Mrs. Banks. So in 1911, Oliver Long lived here, and he took care of the family's horses while they were at Studland. The coachman was Mr. Crook. Part of history, isn't it? Some quite nice snowdrops. So we are en route now for Ballard Down, but I thought we'd just stop off and have a look at Fort Henry on the way through. So this is famous, or Studland Beach is famous for having been used squeeze through, having been used to practice the D-Day landings. So it's yet another wartime walk, I guess, in some ways. But this is where they would have practiced the D-Day landings, and they would have been watched from this vantage point by Winston Churchill. Who else was there? Montgomery. Kind of powers that be. So it's a notable place. And it's a bit of a squeeze with the rucksack on. It was actually built by the Canadians. Very blocky and solid. Anyway, a fleeting glimpse, because we have viewed that before. I videoed it in an earlier video, in fact probably a year ago I think, was potentially, can't remember exactly when. Anyway, we're flying through. I will stop at the church, and I'm pretty sure I filmed the church before as well, but it is such a lovely church that I think it rewards another visit. So the hotel, which is up the top here, would have been the manor house that the Banks family would have stayed at. And suddenly Ballard Down looms ahead of us. That's where we're heading. I haven't had lunch yet. I was kind of debating whether to stop on top to have lunch, but I suspect it's going to be pretty windy up there. Well, cold wind. It's not actually a strong wind, it's a cold wind. And so we've reached Studland Church, which at first view might seem like a blocky, not pretty maybe, but it's actually a delightful church, and it is probably the most complete Norman church in Dorset, and one of the most complete in the whole of the country, to be truthful. It is almost all Norman. There's even little bits, I believe, of Saxon church predecessor, but this is Norman built. It's got this funny kind of stocky tower on top. Probably maybe the builders realized they couldn't go any higher because of the ground it was built on. And in fact, we look inside, which we will do, we can see why. Good job they didn't go any higher. So I don't think it's actually unattractive personally. So one of the interesting things is that there's a room in the tower, top of the tower, I understand, but I think the only way in is through that door there. So it is a magnificent church with these wonderful Norman arches, stocky and round, which is the way the Normans built them. Earlier Norman arches are very plain. Later Norman arches were more ornate. And you can see up here, there's been a fair bit of movement in that. And it's been repaired and shored up. But I think it is absolutely beautiful. And in the sanctuary, we have a vaulted ceiling. I have noticed that there is a door up there above this arch, which I'm assuming also goes into the room above at the top of the tower. Interestingly, there is not much stained glass here, just the one window, which is actually a stained glass window as a memorial to the Banks family. Not sure which one. In fact, I've discovered that it's Cornet William Banks that this window is in memory of. And this is another church with a leper window or leper squint, which is a tiny little window which would allow lepers to peep through and get a view of the altar and the sanctuary. Goes back to the days when leprosy was thought to be extremely contagious. So they were cast-offs effectively. And it has, I believe, a Norman font. Come up into the gallery, get a different view. That is truly beautiful. Amazing place this is. We do need to remember, I think, that it's not a museum. It's actually a place of worship, and it's current and live and working. And the community meet here. And what a beautiful place to meet. One of the most complete Norman churches in the whole of England. And now that I've come up into the gallery, I've spotted that there's another stained glass window. A tiny one. Actually, one of the things it's noted for, which I think I've filmed before when we came here, is its corbel table. That's these figures around the top. They have some rather interesting and slightly naughty ones. Although they all had meaning, of course, in those days. And this is one of the interesting gravestones here. Sergeant William Lawrence, 40th Regiment Foot, who had quite a long and distinguished service. So he served in the war in South America, 1805, through the whole of the Peninsular War, 1808 to 1813. And he finished his life in Studland. So that is the beautiful Studland Church. Now we've got to get climbing. In fact, I think I might stop here for lunch before I climb the hill, because I think it might be a little bit warmer here. Well, cheers. Time for Bovril. I hope you enjoyed that little trip around St Nicholas Church in Studland. No, we've filmed it before, but it is a place that bears revisiting, I think, and I always enjoy walking around Studland Church, and it's a really peaceful place, I always think. And it's got such a legacy when you think about it, Norman, that goes back to, well, and Saxon before it. So it's going back, what's that, 1,000 years plus. So it's got a long legacy. That's good. Time for sustenance before we get climbing this big hill in front of us.